Welcome to this tutorial in which we will look at the user interface in Unity. We'll look at the basics of the canvas system and how to optimize this for different screen resolutions. We'll look at buttons, placing them on the canvas and replacing the default buttons with images which we created earlier. We'll also look at panels and where we can replace the background with an image using a 9-slice method. But that's enough said, let's go. We continue where we stopped with the last tutorial. If this is the first one that you're watching and you started up a new project, you will see that we have an AR camera in the scene. We don't need it, so we can deactivate this. So head over to the right hand side after you select the AR camera. Just go to the inspector, deselect AR camera, and you see it's gone now in the scene. And you have a similar scene when you start up a new project. We are still working in the sample scene, which you can see on the top. The little star next to it means this scene has not been saved. But let us first change the scene name into something that we like. And to change this, we want to head over to the bottom inside of the assets folder. There's the folder called scenes, and this is where you can change the name of the scene. Just click on the right hand mouse button, click on rename and give it any name that you like. In this case, let's call this AR robot. Then a pop-up message appears and this asks us if we want to reload the scene. If we do reload it, the AR camera becomes active again. So any assets that you have deactivated will be active again. So in our case, we are just going to ignore this, so everything remains the same. We change the scene name to AR Robot, as you can see here on the top as well. It has not been saved, and simply by clicking on Save, got everything in place. To add a user interface to the scene, simply go up to Game Object, and from the pull-down menu, select UI, and then select Canvas. The event system will be added automatically as well, as is needed for the interaction. If you add, for example, a button, then the canvas will be added automatically. So we need a canvas anyways. And let's zoom out so we can see the canvas has been added as well as the event system. The canvas is incredibly large compared to the scene. And this is the way that Unity works. It's gonna render the main camera first, depending on the scene size, which can have any size. And on top of that, there's going to be the canvas system with all the buttons and the menus. So let me just explain a little bit. If I add a 3D object to the scene, for example, this cube, you can see the cube is extremely small compared to the graphical user interface. In this case, as the main camera is situated on the bottom, I find it easier to consider those as two separate scenes or two separate objects that I'm going to work with. So there's the scene that we are going to work with, and if I press on F, I can zoom in to the scene which I'm going to create. And if I want to work on the canvas, I'm just going to select the canvas, press on F, and I see the full canvas. And this has to do with the way that Unity works. Unity just overlays this canvas on top of the scene that we are going to create. So the cube is all the way on the bottom and the canvas is the overlay. So let's look at the camera. The camera does not have the cube in place yet. As you can see, the main camera here. Or if I were to change to game view, it's still empty. So let's reposition this camera first. And I'm just going to go to the top. There's two ways you can do it. And see, the camera is not positioned correctly as yet. So I can move it using the gizmos, which I've selected on the left hand side. Or you can use the position bar on the right hand side. So we have a little scene here. And the scene is a cube with the canvas on top of it. Let's first take a look at the canvas that we are going to work with. So I'm going to select the canvas. I'm heading over to game view, and this is just for development purposes. As you can see on the top, it says free aspect here, but I want to change this to the screen that I have. Change this to 1920 to 1080. And as you can see, it changes, so it matches my screen resolution. And if I zoom out, you can see it has changed the resolution matching my screen. This is easier for development. And when I go to the canvas and I head over to the right hand side, you can see all the modules which have been added for this canvas. So if I head over to the canvas, the render mode is set to screen space overlay, which means it's going to be projected on top. It doesn't matter where the camera of the scene is positioned or if I move somewhere, it's always going to be projected on top. There are two more options. One is camera, so then the distance to the main camera is going to be important, or the distance to the AR camera. We are not going to use that. And the same for world space, which is more of an object-oriented menu. Those are more for game development, I would think. So we are just gonna select the overlay. That means projected on top of the camera is gonna be the UI. And what I want is on the scaler, because I'm gonna export this out later to an Android device, but it can be an Apple as well. I want this to scale, so I don't want the constant pixel size. I want to scale with the screen size, and I'm gonna start with the 9020 1080. So I'm changing this, and I want the screen on which this app is going to be projected to match the width or height. So then I'm all set. We have different things in the scene already, which is the canvas and the event system, and we're gonna add some more. So let's get organized a little bit. So head over to game object, add an empty, and this is just gonna serve as a placeholder where we can add all the stuff that belongs together inside of this empty. It's not going to be rendered out, so it's not visible in the scene. I'm just gonna grab the canvas, I'm gonna grab the event system, and I'm gonna drop them into the graphical user interface. So if I'm not working with it, I can just fold this together and then it becomes more organized. So I got the canvas selected and I'm gonna add a button first. So game object, I'm gonna select UI again and I'm gonna add a button. First it's gonna ask me a question. It's gonna ask me if I wanna import the TMP Essentials. Yes, I wanna have the Text Mesh Pro imported as it allows me to manipulate the buttons a little bit better. So I'm just gonna click on Import TMP Essentials. And I don't want the examples, but obviously you can import those if you wanna practice some more. And if I zoom out, you can see that the button has been added. And as mentioned before, the button seems to be extremely large compared to the cube. But if we were to start the game, you can see what's happening. So the main camera is gonna render our view, which we had before. So the main camera sees the cube in view right here, and the button now becomes very small because it's projected on top of the scene that we created. So in the scene it may appear that the button is extremely large, but once you render it, it is not, and we need to change this. So let's work with the button first. So I'm zooming out. In this case you can see how large the button is in comparison to the canvas, and I want this button actually to be on the top. And I want this to be a little bit larger. So I'm heading over to the right hand side. Let's scale this up by 2. And I can position this button. An easy way to position it and anchor this is head over to the right hand side. Click on this little square and this allows you to anchor the button. In our case, I would say let's anchor it to the left hand side. As you can see, the little star appears. And it's anchored right here. You can also change the position. If you hold down Alt, you can automatically change the position of the button. In our case, we want the left hand side and anchor it on the left hand side. If you hold down Shift, you can change the pivot point, which we do not need. But anchoring to the left hand side is easy, so it's always going to be on top. If we start the game now, then you can see that the button is placed on the top and the cube is presented in the middle. Now let's modify this button a little bit. We can stop the game view and we have the button. If we unfold this, there is the text that we imported, so we can manipulate the text. It says button right now, and let me just zoom in. And we can change this text if we like. We can call this menu, for example. And there we have it. Then also, if we head back to button, we can change the color to anything that we like. And if I drag this into like a red color, we can change it. What we want to do in this case is we want to use a image to create this menu. You can also download menu assets from the asset store in Unity, but we are going to use an image. So I'm heading over to assets and let me create a folder first to hold all the images that we are going to import. So I'm going to go create, make a folder, and I'm going to call this icons. And I'm just going to drop in some of the images which I created earlier. And let's just show you how that works. I'm just bringing this in. So these are some of the images which I created. Simply grabbing all of them and dropping them in. And there you are. So inside of the folder icons, I have my different folders. The outside looks white, but it's not. It is a transparent image. So if I were to open this up, and let me just put that onto the screen, you can see the images were created in GIMP, but you can also use Photoshop to create these images. It's a round image. Outside is transparent, which I can use to project on top of the button. But we cannot use it directly. As I head over to the right hand side, and these are all the native images which are present in Unity already, but you can see our image is not present at this point. What you need to do is, after importing, is select one of the images. Then this menu becomes available on the right hand side. It says default, texture type is default, but we want it to be part of the graphical user interface. So change this to sprite, 2D and UI. Now we have a sprite, and if we select the button now, we need to apply the changes, so it's a sprite right now. I can select this image, drag it over to the UI sprite. The button has been added, but as you can see, the scaling is off. So heading over to the right hand side, let's change the Y to a factor 5, as I know that the scale is 1 to 5 or 2 to 10. And we have added the button in the scene. We also have the text available. We do not want to use it, but it is obviously possible to grab hold of the text. Then you can move this down. So if you like, you can add this underneath for identification of the menu. And then on the right hand side, you can change the colors and the size. In this case, we only have this font available, but if you would like to change it, you can, for example, drop in a font from Windows, which is stored in the fonts folder. So let's just take a look at that. So in the assets folder, I'm just going to create a fonts folder. Let me just create this quickly, create folder, and let's call this fonts. Just clicking on it shows the folder. Now I'm going to head over to the Windows folder in your hard drive. On the local drive, Windows and font. Let's take one, for example, Arial. I'm just going to drop this in. And I don't need this anymore. As you can see, this has been added to the Unity scene. I'm going to select one. I'm just a regular Arial one. I'm heading over to Windows. I'm going to Text Mesh Pro. And it says here font asset creator. I'm going to select my font, which is the Arial one, double clicking on it, and I'm just going to generate this one. Everything has been imported, and I'm just going to save it and saving this into the scene. I can close this one, and if I hand over to the text right now, I can select the one I just imported, and it's right here. So selecting Arial gives me the option to change this into a different font. Now I can change this into a different color as well. And as you can see, we have added the text. Starting the game view again, you can see that the text has been added, the button has been added, and the game cube is also available. But we need to do a little bit work because the menu doesn't look quite right. And we need to add some different buttons as well. So let's look at that. So we're looking at a perspective view with the button still having the color that we selected earlier. So let's make these changes. First of all, let's go to the button. As you can see, I still have the color selected. I'm just going to delete this one because I don't need it. I'm just going to make this white again. So you can see the color is back. If I make it darker, then it becomes almost invisible. So let's change it back to the normal color. And for the main camera, as you can see, we have the perspective view right here. But you can also change it to a solid color if you like that development better and it's easier to identify the different aspects. I'm just going back to Skybox, and in this case we can start the view and you can see it's a little bit more clear. The text, however, is not really visible, but I don't want to use it anyway, so we are going to delete the text anyways. What I want to do now is introduce a black background for the other buttons to serve as a background. I'm just going to push this text up. I don't need it, but I like them to be aligned. And then I'm going to introduce the black background, which is in game object, then UI, and then we can choose the panel. That's the overlay, and we're just going to leave the panel name, and we can change the color. Let's change this into something black, and we can change the opacity so we can make it darker and lighter. And obviously we want this to be a little bit lighter. There we are. Now we can change the size of the panel, as we only need a smaller portion of the canvas to be covered by this. We can use the right hand side, but we can also head over to the left hand side, go to Rect Tool, and then we can move it with using the mouse button. So I'm just gonna reposition it and a little bit away from the bottom, and there we are. And we can make it a little bit darker so it has a little bit more contrast. I can already see that the buttons are a little bit too large. I want to change the scale of the button. In this case, the panel is not a child object, but if I were to make it like this, because this is the end result I want to achieve, I want the panel to be a child of the button. So when I move the button around, the panel moves along as well. But the problem with this is if I rescale the button, the panel gets rescaled as well. So let me just change this back to the original scale. I'm just gonna drop the panel on top of the canvas, so it's their own property, not a child of the button. Now I'm gonna change the scale, and I think 1 and 5 will work well for the button. I can also right now make a copy of this button, otherwise I need to introduce a button and change the image again. This is just a little bit easier, so I go here, press on copy, and I can press on paste, and I can drag this down, but as you can see, nothing seems to appear inside of this rectangle, but it needs to be inside of the canvas system. So I copied it, but I copied it outside of the canvas system, and then it's not visible. So as soon as I drop it in, there you are. So you can see that the button appears. This button, I want to be a child of the panel. I want it to be on top of it. And this, for example, I can rename to be like an animation button. So I can just simply rename it. It also has the text available, but there's nothing in it as I copied it. So this one. And what I can do with this button is I can go to icons. I can select another icon, which obviously is a 2D sprite as well. And I can select the button and drop this image on top of it. And there's my second button in place. I think I want to change the panel a little bit, so I can make this smaller so it fits a little bit better. And as the button is a child of the panel, it moves along. So I need to select the button and get it back into place like this. And if I get the top, I can align them. And what I can do now is I can grab the panel and make it a child of the main button. So if I fold everything together, you see that I have the main button, I have the panel, and a child is the button animation. If I move the main button around, you can see everything moves along. And this is the second part that we have. So let's just copy the rest of the buttons. So I got 4 in place. So we got the 4 buttons in place on top of the panel, but let's just change the layout and the naming a little bit so it looks a little bit nicer. When we are finished with the layout and we start the game view, we can see that the user interface is present on the left. The object or the scene is present in the camera view, which is the cube in this case. But the panel looks quite square, and this is something we may want to change, or we want to bring in an image that serves as a background decal. So if I stop this and I would zoom in to the panel, as you can see here, you see there is not really a radius on the end. Unfortunately, in Unity, there's not really an option that you can do it directly in the user interface, but we can bring in an image and we can use this as a background for the panel. So I created one, and let me just bring this in, and this is a square. So it's just a black square that I created. The outer edge obviously is transparent and it has a huge radius. So I'm gonna bring this one in. I'm just gonna drag and drop it inside of the same folder where the icons are. Obviously, I need to change this into a 2D and UI, and I'm gonna apply this. And what I can do, I can select the panel. I can just take the image I just brought in and drop it in. So now it serves as the background. And as you can see, the rounded edges are present, but it is scaled incorrectly as I brought in a square and that changes to a rectangle, so it gets stretched. So to change this, we can use a method called 9slice. So we want to change the image that we brought in. And to do this is we can select the image, which is the sprite obviously. Then we're going to click on Sprite Editor. And since this is the first time we're using it, we need to download it and bring it in the project. This is native with Unity, so we are going to click OK. We are going to go to Window and we are going to Package Manager, and we need to go and head up here. And we want to change this to Unit Registry. Then it's going to grab hold of all the packages installed with Unity already. And we want to go to 2D. And let me just zoom out. This is the 2D. Then we want to head over all the way to the right hand side, which is right here. Then click on Install. That's gonna install the sprite editor for us. Once it's installed, you can just close this window. We can select the image. We can head over to Sprite Editor, and now it opens up a separate window. And we can divide this image up into different segments. So we want to protect the top and the bottom, as we do not want this to get stretched. And also we don't want any stretching in the left and the right. So in this case, we want to protect the edges. Like this on the right hand side at the bottom, we see the numbers. So let's make this a square. So I want 50 from the left and the right, and I want 50 top and bottom, like this. And as you can see, I have 9 different segments. The top one and then the middle. So I can stretch the middle to meet the rectangular shape, but I want to keep the top as it is. I can just simply apply it. What I need to change to use the 9 slice is change the mesh type to full rect. This I can apply, and my 9 slice operation has been applied. Now I can drop this onto the image as a background, and as you can see, when I zoom in, the edges are protected. So what we've basically done is we have stretched the middle part of the image, keeping the top and the bottom intact with the radius that we defined. And if we take a look at the full module, you can see we have rounded edges as a background. We have the top module and we have the scene. So we got the user interface defined for the next step. Obviously, if you want to go one step further, as a background, we just brought in a rounded shape, but you can bring in any shape that you like, that you can stretch to meet the background image. But we are done for this tutorial. So we got the UI defined. Let's take the next step